Hey, it's Robin, the digital ads guy, and today we're going to go over Google responsive search ads and best practices and how to make them sing so you get more conversions. So I'm just here on my campaigns page, and what I'm going to do is just go into a search campaign I've got. It's not a real one, but here's the search campaign, here's the ad group, and we'll click on ads. And then what we'll do is I'll just show you, well, I'll show you creating a responsive search ad from scratch, and what are some of the best practices here. So when we are creating a responsive search ad within Google, as you go, Google will give you some indications as to the strength of the ad. Don't take this too much as gospel. Just because an ad strength is listed as poor versus great doesn't mean necessarily it will do what you want it to do. It just means are you ticking all the boxes that Google wants you to tick? So first off, we have to start with our final URL. So the URL that we're sending people to, that's an obvious one. Display path. You're given up to 2 display paths. These are optional. Generally what I do is I will use them within a certain ad group if it is relevant, and if I think it's going to, if I'm able to get keywords in there and help, grab interest from the user and get them to click. So let's say, for example, this, well, what is this ad set? I think this is, this is our brand ad group, and it's within our, main brand campaign, and we're pretending we're Nike. So we want to sell Nike shoes. So actually the one that Google has proposed, official, that's great. Because what that does is, you see over here, it shows up as Nike.com official. So in this particular case, that's a great use of the display path. You don't have to use these, as I mentioned. You can use the first one, and optionally you can use the second one. In terms of then the headlines and the descriptions, so you're given up to 15 headlines in a responsive search ad, and if you want more, you can just keep adding space for them here until you get to the full 15, and you're given up to 4 description spaces. As a rule of thumb, and really, I mean, this is as a sort of hard and fast rule, actually, is use them all. Use up all of your headline spaces. Use up all of your description spaces. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to say, oh, this one is getting a little bit, away from a direct call to action. It's more of a supporting statement, something like that. Don't worry about it, because the way responsive search ads work is that Google will automatically combine headlines, either 1, 2, or 3 headlines. It'll combine them in different permutations, and it will very quickly find out what works. Okay? And when I say what works, I mean what achieves your campaign objectives, whether that is clicks or whether that is ultimately conversions. So give Google as many options as possible to test. So use all 15 headlines, use all 4 descriptions. The other thing I want to point out is this pinning option here. So there's a few different options for pinning. The first one is to show in any unpinned position. So that's basically to say, Google, you do what you want with this headline, and that's the default, and it's listed as recommended. It is what I recommend as well. Sometimes you may want to pin a headline in position 1. So that's to say, it always appears in that first position. So whenever we've got, an ad showing here, this first headline, Nike Air Max 95, it's always going to appear in the first position, no matter what. You can, however, also pin more than one headline in the first position, and what that means is that Google will show any of the first headlines, it will show any of them in that first position. The other thing is, it will necessarily not show those headlines in any other position. So you're forcing Google to say, look, use either of these headlines in the first position, use anything else in positions 2 or 3. I like to think I'm kind of a smart guy. I've been doing digital ads for a long time, but honestly, I am not smarter than Google. Google knows way more about the individual user than just what they are searching on. It has all kinds of background information, trillions of points of data at its disposal. It may know better than me what headline and combination of headlines is going to work. So I leave these unpinned. There are certain examples, certain situations where you may want to pin something in a first or even a second position. If you are, promoting an event, promoting an open house, promoting the name of the event, something like that, you always want that event's name to appear first, and then let Google figure out what it does in headlines 2 and 3, but that's a very rare exception. In terms of, and same rule applies for descriptions. Don't pin them. You also want to make them different enough that Google actually has something useful to test. I mean, don't take a description and then just change. Here we've got Nike shoes are made with premium materials. We don't want to go in here and say Nike shoes are made with great materials. You don't want to do that. You want it to be different enough that it's meaningful for Google to test, and Google will figure out what works best. I'm going to skip over images, business name, logo, site links. These are all image assets which are supporting search ads, responsive search ads, but I'm not going to talk about them today. You can put in things like tracking templates. I very rarely recommend you do that at the ad level. You're almost always going to want to do that at the account level and maybe the campaign level. But basically, that's the crux of it for a responsive search ad. That's how you structure it. Some other finer points are making sure you include, calls to action. I mean, buy now is probably a terrible call to action, but some kind of a call to action that, again, Google can sprinkle in and see what works. Potentially, you can work in things like, here, it's got one, it's picked up to 50% off select styles. Sometimes this is great to put in as a headline. There are other ways to put in promotions like a promotion asset within the campaign, and also a headline asset, which is a specific headline that Google can use in an ad, but it's outside of the responsive search ad. It lives in the assets area, and you can actually give it a start and end date. So if you're running, say, a Black Friday promotion, you can have a headline asset that says Black Friday up to 50% off, and it starts on this date and it ends on this date, along with a promotion that's more of a structured asset. Now, in terms of how do you write ad copy, I don't intend this video to be a masterclass in creative writing or ad copy, but basically I've got a couple things that I do regularly to produce ad copy. The first and probably the most important is to use the landing page itself as a source of key messaging. So in this case, what's the URL you're sending people to? Here's our URL, this shoes URL. If we go to this page, Nike shoes and sneakers, yes, okay. What's on this page? What's the content on this page? What can I pull out? Text could be bestsellers. It could be Nike shoes and sneakers, up 1,400 plus models, that kind of idea. So pulling key messaging from your landing page is a key one. Another one, of course, is something like an LLM, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever you like. It can be great for inspiration. I have actually created a custom GPT in ChatGPT that helps me write responsive search ads. So it understands, I've given it a bit of information around what makes a good headline, what makes a good description. I've sort of trained ChatGPT a bit, and I've also given it the limitations. No more than 30 characters for headlines, no more than 90 for descriptions. And generally it does an okay job, but at minimum it gets the inspiration going, right? It gets the juices flowing, which is quite useful. The other couple things that I wanted to note were dynamic keyword replacements. So, for example, we've got Nike Air Max 95 as one of our headlines. What we may want to do in certain situations is, whatever the user searches for on Google, if it triggers our ad, we actually want the headline of the ad, or one of the headlines, to be that exact search phrase. And the way in which you do that, there's a specific syntax with the curly brackets, keyword colon, put in the default text, and a close curly bracket. So what this is going to do is it's going to say, whatever keyword people actually searched on, it'll put that in as a headline position, unless it doesn't make sense or unless it doesn't fit, in which case this is the default, right? So use Nike Air Max as that default. I don't use this a whole lot, but it can be quite useful. Another one that I wanted to mention is the location asset. So if, for example, you needed location worked in there, maybe you're selling homes and people are looking in several different neighborhoods, and you're servicing multiple neighborhoods. If they're doing a search for a specific location, you want to include that right in there. So, city, it says example Mountain View. It could be the default text here of Mountain View. So you can see here, it's putting it in location city, So if they're using a city in their search, and I don't know California geography all that well, but they're saying it's Los Angeles or something. If they do a search for Los Angeles, it'll replace this headline with Los Angeles. But if it's not something that Google can do, then it'll use the default of Mountain View. So those I don't use nearly as much, but they can be quite powerful in certain situations. Finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about here with respect to responsive search ads is actually something outside of responsive search ads that we talked about before, which are assets. Assets are very interesting little add-ons that can, not always, but can appear next to your ad to provide additional context and encourage people to click and engage with the ad more often. And there's a whole variety of different assets that you have at your disposal within Google. My recommendation is to use as many of them as you can, because again, what you're doing is you're giving Google as many options as possible to try to get people to click and ultimately convert. So the first one is images. That's fairly self-explanatory. In a search campaign, these images are basically, they're going to be anything without any kind of text on them. A simple picture, maybe a graphic, an illustration. It should be very simple because it's going to appear, quite small next to the search ad, and it doesn't always appear. But they can be quite useful. The search ads that have images next to them get clicked a lot more often, so it's a good asset to have. The business name and logo, this can provide credibility. I mean, in our fictional situation here, we're pretending we're Nike, making sure we have Nike as the business name and we have the official logo in there can add credibility. Sitelink assets are, it's actually what's on screen right now, they're optional links to other places in the site. So our responsive search ad in this case, we're sending people directly to a particular shoe page on the Nike site, but maybe we also want to present them with options to say if they don't want to click that, right below will appear an option to contact them or learn about them, or I've actually got assets in here for my company, but they're just other places that you would be willing to send people to try to encourage some kind of conversion on your site. I alluded to headline assets before. Those are specific assets that Google can use as part of its host of headlines for a particular ad. And the great thing here is you can give them a start and an end date. So if it applies to a sale, some kind of seasonality. You can do the same thing with the description. Callouts are kind of like bonus headlines. They're up to 25 characters and not 30, but you can have a whole host of them, and sometimes Google will just add those on to your ad if it thinks it's more likely to get a click. Structured snippets are things like, types of products or services that you offer, or different models that you have, different product tiers, things like that. You can sort of list them out. A call asset is just a phone number. If getting a phone call from someone is just as good as a click, you may include that. I'll skip over lead forms. Skip over message. Location is tied to your Google My Business account. So if you integrate that with Google Ads, your locations will show up there and you can start attaching those to certain campaigns. A price asset is basically saying, we've got product, our starter package, our medium package, our pro package, and what the price starts at, that kind of idea. I'll skip over app and then promotion. So the promotion asset is, if you're running a promotion like up to X percentage off, or, starting at $99, that kind of idea, you can have that in there, again with a start and end date, which is kind of nice. You can also assign whether or not it belongs to a particular holiday like Black Friday or Christmas, and those are particularly useful if you're in the e-commerce world. So I hope this was helpful in learning more about responsive search ads and how to prepare really good search ads that adhere to best practices. So good luck.